For this project, any category 3 yarn will work, but I used a half a skein of baby brunette sport yarn in the color baby gray. As for tools, a 4.5mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There's an optional written pattern that can help out too. That link will be in the description if you'd like to grab that and follow along. And watch till the end of the video to find out how to enter this week's giveaway. We're using 4 stitches for this project and they will be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, and double crochet. This tutorial is for a size small, but you can adjust it for your size, and we explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Starting off this top, we're first going to grab our category 3 yarn, grab our 4.5mm hook, and start off by making a chain that reaches around the widest part of your bust. And just to let you guys know, I have a total of 110 chains, or that is 29 inches or 74 centimeters. Now that we have our chain, the next thing that we're going to do is actually go into that first chain that we made for ourselves with a slip stitch, creating a circle. But right before we do that, we're just going to run our thumb along one side of our chain, making sure that it's all facing one direction, just so that it's easier for us to go into the next rows after this. But once when we are sure that it's all facing one direction, we're going to insert our hook into that first chain that we made for ourselves with a slip stitch. So insert. From here, we're just going to take our working yarn and we're going to yarn over, pull through both loops that's on our hook. And then once we have this, we're going to lay this down and take a look at it because we have just a little bit of measuring to do before we actually get in with our pattern. So this is what we should have. We should have a little chain circle situation going on right here. And then we need to do just a little bit of measuring before we go in with the side to back. And it's going to go all the way around to our side again. We're actually going to measure the front of ourselves. As you guys can see, my slip stitch area where we just went in and joined our chain together is actually off center a little bit because this is actually going to be right where mid boob is. And then once when this is here, then we can go ahead and measure all the way over to next mid boob, and then we can insert our stitch marker there because this portion is going to be where our detail is. So I've went ahead and inserted my stitch markers, but I'm just going to tell you guys where and what my measurements are. But going from where this slip stitch is, like I said, this was mid boob on one side, doesn't matter which boob you guys pick. But once when we have this, we're actually going to go into the next spot with our stitch marker. That's going to be right where our cleavage is. And just to let you guys know, that is 10 loops away from my slip stitch. I've inserted my hook, or that's about 2.5 inches or 6 centimeters. And then this next part is easy. Since we have this stitch marker, we're just going to take the same first measurement that we had. So as an example, mine was 10. And then just insert that on the other side of our cleavage stitch marker. And that'll eventually reach our other mid boob. And with those measurements that I just gave you, I have a total of 20 loops from where our hook is over to this next stitch marker. And that is a total of 5 inches or 13 centimeters. And you guys can obviously adjust if needed. But once when you have this, we're going to go in with the body portion that's going to go from our side. It's going to wrap around our back and then back around to our side over to this stitch marker that we have. So going into this next portion that we have, we're actually going to be making a chain that goes from where you guys want the bottom of the top to be. And then we're just going to make a chain that goes all the way up until it reaches mid underarm. And then we're going to keep doing this until it reaches the back portion. And then from there, we're going to do a little extension, and then that's going to be the height of our back. So let's do just this first portion that reaches to our underarm really quick. Just so that you guys know, I'm going to go in with a chain of 27, or that's 7 inches or 18 centimeters. So that's going to be pretty simple. Go ahead and make a chain of whatever measurement you guys need. So this is what we should have. We have our circle portion that will eventually wrap around our body, and then we also have this chain that reaches from where we want the bottom of the top to be all the way up until it reaches our underarm. And from here, all we're going to do is do a chain up of 1, and then into that second loop from our hook, we're just going to be going in with 1 slip stitch into every loop that we have. So let's do the next one together. We're going to insert our hook into that next loop. We're going to yarn over, pull through everything on our hook. And we're just going to keep doing this all the way down. Once we get down to the base, we will be doing a slip stitch into that next available base loop. So I'll meet you guys back so that we can do that together. Now that we made our way all the way down with our row of slip stitches, we're going to slip stitch into the base. It's going to be a lot of slip stitches this video, but once when we get here, we're just going to take a look at this next available loop that we have. Insert our hook. Once we get here, we're going to yarn over, pull through everything, and that closes off this row. And we do need to work our way up to the next row, so all that is slip stitching into the next available loop that we have in our base. Yarn over, pull through both. We are going to be flipping our work and then more slip stitches, but the rest of these are going to be going in with the back loop slip stitches. So we're going to go into this first back loop that we have available with a back loop slip stitch. So into that back loop, we're going to yarn over, pull through both loops. Let's do it just one more time into that next back loop, yarn over, pull through. And we're going to keep doing this all the way, down. Once we make it down to the end, we're going to do a chain up of 1, flip our work, and then do more back loop slip stitches until we get into the base. And then once we get into the base, we're going to attach it the same exact way that we did just now. So we're going to slip stitch into the next available loop just to close off that row. And then to work our way up to the next row, we're going to slip stitch into that next loop, flip our work, and then do more back loop slip stitches going back down. And we're going to keep doing this until we have a little chunk that actually reaches from wherever we're at. So right now we're at mid boob, and we're going to keep going until this reaches right behind our underarm. And I will let you guys know in the next clip the amount of rows and the length that I have, and then from there we can get started on the back portion. Okie dokie, so we are back with our underarm portion, and by underarm I mean the part that wraps around you. It goes from mid boob to the other side of your underarm, so basically your back. And just to let you guys know, I have a total of 31 rows, and that came out to about 5 inches or 13 centimeters. And it is folded over like this just so we can get a better visual of what things are going to come out looking like. But all we're going to have to do is just count the loops or amount of rows that we have. Like I said, I have a total of 31 rows. And then we're going to have to insert a stitch marker in through the other side just to make sure that our underarm to mid boob section is even on both sides. So from that second stitch marker that we've left for ourselves, we're going to count in the opposite direction than we are currently working. And we're just going to be inserting our stitch marker into the same loop that we have as the amount of rows on the other side. Does that make sense? So as an example, I have 31 rows. So I'm going to go in this direction and count out 31 rows and then insert my stitch marker into there. And then now, since this back portion is available, all of this is going to be our back piece now. And now that we have all of that figured out, the next thing we're going to go into is our back piece, and that's super duper simple. We're just going to need to do a little bit of counting before we actually get started. But what we're going to do is actually count the loops that we have between our slip stitch and our first stitch marker. And like I said, I had 10. So from where we're at in the corner, I'm just going to do a chain up of whatever number that is, and mine is 10. And now that we have our chain, what we're going to do is block off that last chain, do a chain up of 1, and this part is going to be super simple. We're just going to be going into that chain that we blocked off with a back loop slip stitch. And this is actually going to be the remainder of our back portion as well. We're just going to be putting 1 back loop slip stitch into every loop that we have going back down our chain, and then once we get to the body, do the same thing into the body, and then we're going to connect into the base the same way that we've been connecting into bases. And then just keep doing that until we hit our next stitch marker that we have left for ourselves. And then a really quick tip that I have for you guys before we move on is once when we do put this up to ourselves, when we have little chunks like this available, go ahead and make sure that you stretch it as much as possible, because we are going in with back loop slip stitches so that this top can be form fitting. So make sure that when you're trying it on, that it's going to fit the same way that it would try on once when you're actually wearing it, not in the middle of making it. Alright, so we are back, and this is what we should have really quickly. I'll say as a forewarning, I know that this is a little daunting because it looks so small, but if you guys were keeping up with your proper measurements, the smallness of it is completely fine, because I'm going to remind you again, it does stretch quite a bit. So now that we have our back portion, we're now going to go in with this little underarm to mid boob portion again, just going across this other side. And I do have some really quick tips for you guys. This next portion is going to be all up to you guys. It depends on where you end. If you guys end up here, you guys have 2 options. You guys can either do just 1 row of back loop slip stitches down just so that we can make it into the base, or you guys can cut and tie and then reattach your yarn into the next available loop in the base so that we can work our way up. with this little underarm to side boob portion. That is completely up to you guys, or if you're like me and you guys ended down here, then you guys are completely fine. But either way, no matter what you guys pick, everything else should be the same after that. But what we're going to do from here is just work our way up with back loop slip stitches until we reach our stitch marker. And the stitch marker is in the same spot where we ended our first mid boob to underarm portion, and then we did our chain up of whatever measurement that you guys have. So just as a refresher, I did have a chain up of 10. So the easiest way for me to figure that out was count 10 from the top, insert my stitch marker into the 11th, and then we're just going to keep working our way up until we get into the loop that has our stitch marker in it. And then just keep going back and forth with back loop slip stitches all the way around until we reach our next stitch marker, which was a stitch marker that we placed in the beginning where our mid boob was. And then from there we can get started on the rest of the top. Alright, so we are back with our piece, and this is what it's supposed to be looking like. I don't actually know what shape this is, but we have a mid boob to side portion, and then this taller portion is our back. And then this goes back from our underarm back area over to mid boob. And then we now have these little chunks that we're going to use to curve up and over our shoulders. But right before we get up to that point, we're actually going to want to go around just the tops with a row of single crochet, just so it's easier for us to go in with the, I guess we're going to call it the flat portion. But this next portion is also going to be up to you. If you guys end down here, the easiest thing is probably to just do a chain up of 1 and cut and then reinsert your hook into one of these corners. But if you guys just want to go back up with back loop slip stitches, that's fine too. I would just recommend to not go into the next loop into the base. But once when you connect this last row that you have, just do a chain up of 1 and then just automatically go back up. That's completely up to you guys though. But everyone should at least start this portion in this corner. And then this part is going to be fairly simple. We're just going to be going all the way around up this back portion, across the back, down here, and then back around this section as well, just with single crochets. And we're just going to be putting 1 single crochet into every loop / every side slip stitch row. So however many rows you guys have from this point all the way around to this point, you guys should have that many single crochets. We're going to do our single crochets up. So that's going to be the same amount of loops that you guys made for your chain up to get to your back portion, and then so on and so forth. So let's just do the first couple together, and then I'll let you guys go from there. So all we're going to do is just do a chain up of 1. So we were either already here or you guys have attached your hook and your yarn, does not matter. But after that chain up of 1, we're just going to be kind of pulling these rows apart so that we can put 1 single crochet into each of the side slip stitch rows. And I'm just going to show you guys where I'm going to be inserting. So there's going to be a clear rib and then a divot. So we're going to be going into both. So 1 into each divot. So this first one just so happens to be a divot. Insert, single crochet. And then this rib right here, you can insert your hook directly in between those 2 loops like that with it might be a little tricky sometimes, single crochet. Now that we went into a rib, we're going back into a divot, which is this loop right here. Single crochet, and then we're just going to keep doing that all the way around. I will meet you guys back once when we get to this portion that meets up to our back, but only to remind you guys that we're not going to do any increases or decreases right here. We do want this to curve, so we're just going to do our single crochets and then just kind of make your way up. And then once we get here, we are going to be doing a little increase, but then same thing but in reverse over here, another little increase over here, and single crochets all the way past this corner so it can curve, and then all the way back down. So I'll meet you guys back once when we get to this corner right here. So we're finally at this corner, and what we're going to do is just go into that last divot with a single crochet. And once we have that last single crochet, all we're going to do is just go into that next loop that we have that's in this chain up chunk that we have with a single crochet. That is a god-awful noise. I'm going to do something with that. Okay, so we're going to keep doing that all the way up until we get to this corner. So we're actually just going to stick with each other because that is super close. Okay, so we finally made it over to this corner loop that we have, and then into this corner loop we're just going to be doing an increase of 2 because we do kind of want this to remain a point, whereas this one we just wanted it to curve a little bit more. So into this last loop we're going to go in with 2 single crochet. So here is 1, and then here is 2. Once we have that, we're going to be going across this top back portion the same way that we did this mid boob to underarm portion, just putting 1 single crochet into each of these side slip stitch rows. Once we get to this corner, do another increase of 2, and then we're going to do single crochets all the way down until we get down to this corner. Once we get here, go ahead and cut and tie. Okay, this is what we should have now that we have gone in with our single crochet rows all along the top. And if the top looks a little wrinkly, that is more than fine. It'll all even out when we wear it. And speaking of wearing it, we're going to need to try this on right now because we're going to try and figure out where our armhole is from now. This next section is going to be a little different, but this is the best way that I knew how to do it and explain it. So let's just stick with each other really quick. What we're going to want to do is try this on. And then when we're trying this on, we are going to want to make sure that we're pulling this across as tight as it would be as if we were wearing it when the front portion is on. We don't want it to be any looser or any tighter than it needs to be because this part actually needs to be very accurate. But once we get here, we're going to try this on and then insert stitch markers into the points that is right in front of your underarm. So counting in from this first chunk that we have, going to the side, I actually counted out 13 loops and I inserted my stitch marker into the 13th loop. This is on both sides for me, into the 13th loop. And then that came out to about 2.5 inches or about 6 centimeters, if that helps. And we're going to be sticking our stitch markers into there. And then also once when it's on, we're going to want to go in. Let me show you guys. From this stitch marker that we were at, we're going to measure around our shoulder and over to this corner that we have. And then doing this part by yourself may be a little tricky. So if you have a buddy, go ahead and grab them, or you may just have to do what I did and just kind of like try it on, finagle your way into getting the right measurement that you guys need. But I actually went in with about 10 inches or 25 centimeters. And once when we have that amount, which I don't know how many chains that is, I'll let you guys know in the next clip. But once when we have this measurement right here from the front to in front of our underarm, and then from our underarm over our shoulder to the corner of this back portion, then we can start going in with our next portion. But once when we have those measurements, we're actually just going to be going in with our first chain, because for this next portion, I know I said that we need to measure from this stitch marker to this corner, but we're not going to be inserting it into this corner because that will actually be the top of our work, if that makes sense. But from this stitch marker, we're actually just going to make a chain that has that measurement that we just measured out for ourselves, plus the amount of single crochets that we have on top here, or the amount of slip stitch rows, so whatever number you guys have. And then on the opposite side of this, we're obviously going to be working our way into this next portion. And then they're going to have that same measurement that we have on the other side from this corner to the stitch marker, and we're going to connect it from here. But this is all going to be loose, and we're going to keep going back and forth like that until, please stick with me, we reach our middle loops. And then once we reach our middle loops, we're going to go back up and then into that last loop, which we should be working our work inward like this, so it'll end up being thicker, and then it'll go up and around. Our last loop is going to attach into this back portion and then work our way back down and down here. So I'll stick with you guys for as much as I can, but this is a little confusing. But if you guys have any comments or questions, concerns, please feel free to leave any questions that you guys have in the comments down below. Or there's also going to be a written pattern for a size small. If you guys want to grab that, that will also be linked in the description as well. But now that I have spoken your head off, what we're going to do now is go into one of these sides. It doesn't matter which one, you guys can pick. And then we're going to be inserting our hook into the next available loop that we have into this base so that we can go in with single crochets to that chain. And then we're just going to work our way all the way around. So we're just going to insert our hook into that next available loop. Grab our working yarn, insert that onto our hook, and then from here we're going to go in with back loop single crochets all the way up this side portion that we have right here. And then go ahead and stop once when you guys get to this little corner that we have, and I'll show you guys what to do from there. So we're now at this corner, and this is going to be super simple. We want this to curve instead of anything else. So what we would normally do here is some sort of an increase situation but I found out that that actually makes more of a square or rectangle. So from here, it's going to feel extremely unnatural. I'm sorry, but we're just going to continue putting one single crochet even over this corner all the way up until we get to our stitch marker. So we're just going to do those together. I'm just going to keep doing single crochets, no increase. I'm sorry if this makes you feel cringy. I know that I do, but you just got to do what you got to do. But you're just going to keep doing this until you guys hit your stitch marker. And then we're going to start off by making that chain that you guys measured from the stitch marker up to the top corner of our back piece right here. Okay, so we have made our way over to our first stitch marker, and now we're just going to make an extremely long chain that reaches around the entirety of our back. We will not be inserting it into anything until we reach this next stitch marker that we have right here on the other side that's going to connect to the front of your underarm, and then work our way back down and then into the base as well. So like I said before, I did my measurements and I measured from this stitch marker up to this corner. We're not going to attach it there, but like I said before, I have a total of 10 inches or about 25 centimeters, and that comes out to about 35 chains. Now, I know I gave you guys my numbers, but please just make sure that it fits you, because I want this to fit you as well as it possibly can, but it could be a little bit different for everyone. So I'm going to start off by making my 35 chains, and then I'm going to talk to you guys about the rest of the chain that we're going to make, just to clarify, and then we'll move on from there. Alright, so we're back, and we now have our chain that reaches from our stitch marker over to the corner that we have into the back portion. And then from here, we're just going to continue on with our chain, but making the same amount of chains that we have single crochets up here on top of the chain. And we're just going to continue on with our chain from here, doing the same amount of chains as we have loops on top of this back portion that we have. So you guys can either count these single crochets that we just went into not too long ago, or you guys can count the amount of rows that you guys have for your stitch markers. It should all be the same number, but whatever you guys feel more comfortable with. And I actually have just 25 rows that I have right here. So on top of this 35 that I just made for myself, I'm going to put another 25 on top of this. So there's going to be a decently long chain. And then once when we have our chain amount that we have for our back piece on top of this, I guess we're going to call it our arm over arm chain, then we're just going to take the same number that we figured out for ourselves for the over arm chain and then add that to the end of this one, because it should be the same amount that we had on the other side. At this point we should be around right here, and then we're just going to make a chain that is the same amount of chains that we did like 2 seconds ago, because it's going to reach down to this stitch marker. So like I said before, I have a total of 35 chains, so I'm going to be doing that on top of this already existing chain. And then once when we have this extremely long chain for ourselves, now we can insert our hook back into this loop that has our stitch marker into it, that just so happens to be right in front of our underarm. So we're just going to take this out, insert our hook into that loop. Ooh, we're going to be inserting it into the back loop, my bad. And then we're going to single crochet just like normal. And from here, the rest of this should make a lot more sense than what I just explained. We're just going to be going in with back loop single crochets all the way down. And we're just going to ignore this corner. We're just going to go all the way down with back loop single crochets. And I'll meet you guys back once we get into the base so that we can connect it and then also start up our next row. Alright, so we have our very long chain attached to our work, and we just did back loop single crochets all the way down. And now we're going to slip stitch into the base is what we're going to call it, but this is actually the front portion that is going to close up with our curve detail. But once when we're here, we're just going to take a look at the next available loop that we have into our base, and we're going to slip stitch into that guy to close off that back loop single crochet row. And then from here, we're just going to need to keep working back and forth, including into the chain. It's going to be a little tedious with half double crochets, and then, well, no, with back loop half double crochets, I'm sorry. But how we're going to work our way up to that is by slip stitching up the next two available loops that we have into the base. So there's one, there's two. Once when we have those two, we're going to be flipping our work, and then into every single loop that we have, we're going to be going in with a back loop half double crochet. So we're going to prepare for a half double, insert our hook into that next available loop that we have, yarn over, pull through. From there, we're going to yarn over, pull through all three loops, and that is our first back loop half double. Let's do just one more. Prepare for a half double, go into that back loop, yarn over, pull through all 3. And we're going to keep doing this all the way across our chain. And then once we make it to the other end, we're going to attach into the base again by slip stitching into it, but I'll meet you guys back just so I can show you guys how to do that one more time. So we just made it all the way down with our very long row of back loop half double crochets, and we are back at the base. And what we're going to do from here is just attach it the same way that we did our other side, but instead of doing the slip stitch of 2, we're just going to be counting up 2, and that's basically going to be how we start and end off every row, is just counting up 2 or slip stitching up 2. But once we get here, we're going to count up the next 2 loops to close off this row that we just worked on. And then to work our way up to the next row, we're going to go in with 2 more slip stitches, if it's possible. Okay, there's 1. And then there is 2. When we have that, we're going to be flipping our work, and then we're going to keep going back and forth with back loop half double crochets connecting into the base. And we're going to keep going like that until we reach this stitch marker that we left for ourselves, which is supposed to be where our cleavage was, or if it fell out, or if you guys didn't take that measurement down, then it's basically just going to keep working our way inwards until we don't have any more loops left to go into. So go ahead and do all of those back loop half double crochets, and then I'll meet you guys back. Okay, so we are back with our multiple rows of back loop half double crochets, and I'm looking at it now and it looks even nuttier than it did before, but I am actually back just to let you guys know that if you guys are like me and you guys have just 1 loop left for each side, then you guys can actually go in with a row of back loop single crochets, which is what I'm going to do. Same thing, just going all the way around. But if you guys have actually ended and your 2 sides, I guess, of your back loop half double crochets are basically touching each other, then you guys can skip this next step, and then in the next clip we will continue on with what we have to do. But I'm just going to show you guys how to do the back loop single crochets just one time, and then we can move on from there. So I have these 2 loops, which is where my stitch marker is at. I'm going to take out my stitch marker, and then just into that next available loop, we're going to be slip stitching into that next loop. We're going to flip our work, and from here we're just going to do back loop single crochets all the way around. Once we get down here, we should have just 1 loop left if you guys are like me, and then you guys can actually slip stitch into that loop as well. So let's just do the first one together. We're going to insert our hook into that first back loop with a single crochet, and go ahead and keep doing this all the way down. Alright, so we just went in with our last row of, my last row of back loop single crochets. Some of you may not have had to do that, but when we are ready to, I guess, seam it all up, what we're going to do is actually try this on again. We'll try this on again and then figure out how high you want your seam to go. Then this is all going to be dependent on you guys, how much you want to show. If you guys want to show anything at all, if you want to show a lot, that is completely up to you guys. But I'm going to keep mine fairly high because I ain't got too much to show. But what I did was measured from this bottom portion, measured all the way up, and I have a total of about 4.5 inches or 11 centimeters, or that's roughly 20 loops. But when we have figured out how high we want our middle seam to go, we're actually going to go in with a row of single crochet, single crocheting in through the 2 panels that we have, just cinching this in together. So let's get started on that right now. So what we are going to do is, we didn't cut and tie. If you did, that's fine, just reattach your work. But we're just going to pull this on through. And then we're just going to seam this up all the way up until I get to my stitch marker. So how we do that is inserting our hook into the first available loop into the front panel, and then into the next available loop that we have into the back panel. And then we're going to single crochet. Let's do the next one together. Into the first available loop that we have into the front panel, and then next into the back panel. And single crochet. It's fairly simple, so go ahead and keep doing this until you guys get the desired seam length height that you guys want, and then we're actually going to connect the back, and then it'll actually start to look like something, and then we can finish this guy off with a couple more details. So I'll meet you guys back when we have made our way up to this portion's stitch marker. Alrighty, so we're back and we have just finished up going in with this middle seam. I tried this on and everything is looking great. But when we get here, the next thing that we're going to have to do is just seam up this fold and the back piece together. And we're going to have to do a few steps in order to get there. The first thing that we're going to need to do is flip this inside out, so our seam is going to be along the inside. Once when it's flipped, the next thing that we're going to have to do is figure out exactly which loop we're going to have to go in for this fold strap that we have, where it corresponds with the same amount of loops on both sides and also into the middle. So the easiest way to do that is, remember a couple clips ago when I said to measure from the stitch marker up to this corner portion of our back, whatever amount of chains you guys have there, we're going to count that same amount of chains, and then we're going to be inserting our stitch marker into that loop. So as an example, this is where the stitch marker was. All I did was found that loop and then traced it up. From there, I counted however many loops I had, which just so happened to be 35, counted all the way around, inserted my stitch marker, and then also into the corner of this back piece, and then same thing on the other side, and now I am ready to go. And then the last tip that I have for you guys is just to make sure that the fold piece that you guys have isn't twisted, because this can be a little confusing because there's a decent amount of moving parts to this. So just make sure that everything is laying flat in the way that it's supposed to be. And so once we have all that figured out, we are just going to go in with a row of back loop single crochets just to close this all up and just to make our band just a tiny bit thicker. Oh, one more tip. The direction that we're going to be going in, since we're going in with back loop single crochets, we do still want to maintain this ribbing that we have. We're going to take a look at the previous row that we did, and as you guys can see, the loops that we have made for ourselves are in kind of like a teardrop shape, and then the curved portion of the teardrop is the direction that we were going. So in the previous row we went across this way, and since before we were doing a chain up of one and flipping our work, we're going to need to go the opposite way. So I'm going to be working into this section and then working down this way. So what I like to do is, I'm not going to go into here just yet. We're going to leave that decrease for the very end, but we're going to be counting up 3 loops from that seam. So here's 1, 2, 3. Insert our hook into that back loop, insert my yarn onto my hook, pull through, do a chain up of 1, and then from here just do back loop single crochets all the way across until we reach our first stitch marker right here, and then I'll meet you guys back to show you guys what we're going to do. Alright, so we've done our back loop single crochets all the way down until we've reached our first stitch marker, and this portion is going to be more single crochets, but we're going to be seaming these 2 pieces together, but we're going to be going into the inside loops. So let's do that together. We're going to be taking out our stitch marker and we're going in with the inside loop so that we can maintain this ribbing that we have. But into this first corner loop that we have into our back, we're going to insert our hook, and then into this next loop that we have into the fold or the back panel, what we're going to call it for now, we're going to be going into the inside loop. I'm sorry, that was the wrong one. We're going to be going into the loop that is closest to us and then single crochet. Let's do that a couple more times. So into this next available loop that we have these 2 loops that we would typically go into, but we're going to be only inserting our hook into that back loop into the front panel. And then into the back panel, we're only going to be inserting our hook in through that front loop and single crochet. And go ahead and keep doing that until we reach our next stitch marker. Once we reach our next stitch marker, we obviously don't have any more loops of the back portion to go into, so just keep going all the way down with back loop single crochets until we reach our seam all the way at the bottom, and then I'll show you guys what to do from there. Okay, so we are back to our seam, and what we're going to do here, we did leave 2 loops right before we got to the seam, and then also 2 loops right after the seam. That's why we started into the 3rd loop, and we're just going to do a decrease of 2 here and a decrease of 2 here just to keep this V a little bit more V-like. So let's do that together. What we're going to do is insert our hook into that next available back loop, yarn over, pull through, and also into that next available back loop, pull through. We should have 3 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. We're going to pull that tight. Once we have that, we're going to skip over, since we don't have any more loops over here, into this first available back loop that we have right here, yarn over, pull through, and then into this next available back loop, yarn over, pull through. 3 loops. We're going to yarn over, pull through all 3 loops, and then from here we're going to slip stitch into that first single crochet that we made into this row. Once we have that, we're going to do a chain up of 1 and cut. Okay, so we are back and we have just gone in with this little divot V-neck that we just made for ourselves, and the last thing that we have to do is actually our sleeves, and this is going to be just a smidge bit unconventional, so stick with me, it'll end up working out, I promise. But we're going to have to go in with one side using linked treble crochets. I'm going to show you guys how to do that, and then we're going to go around with, let's just show you guys actually. The linked treble crochets are going to be along this side, but since this folds over, it's actually going to kind of hide underneath our fold over that we have, and then from there along the inside it's going to be the same height as our second, back loop double crochet row, or no, our thirds. I'm sorry, this is 1, 2, 3. And then as you guys can see, all of these loops we're actually going to be going into with a row of single crochet. And then when we have that finished up, then we can go in with the length of our sleeve, and then all of that will end up being normal just like usual. So let's do the linked treble crochet first, and then from there we'll go all the way across with it, and then we will attach with a single crochet, and the single crochet is that so it's easier for us to attach our sleeve, and then we can go in with the length of our sleeve. So the easiest way that I figured out to do this is actually just to flip it inside out. But like I said before, since there are a lot of moving parts to this, you just want to make sure that you keep everything on the correct side. So like this, it's folded, you don't actually know what's going on. Sometimes I get confused too. So you're just going to want to make sure that everything is facing the direction that it's supposed to be facing. And then we'll get to the other sleeve later. But when we get here, we're going to be inserting our hook into this bottom corner loop that we have. We're going to be taking our yarn, inserting our hook onto our yarn, and from there we're going to do a chain up of 4. So here is pull through 1, 2, 3, and 4. So since this is new, I have adjusted a little bit so that you guys can see a little bit easier. But we just finished up doing our chain up of 4. That's usually what we do to work our way up for a regular treble crochet, and that is great. So how we're going to do this is actually work into the spine, just into this chain, just to start it off. So we have our chain up of 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to be inserting our hook into the second spine loop of our chain. So we're skipping this first one. And then as for the spine, I mean just these singular loops that we have on the bottom side of our chain. This is the top, usually. We flip it over, just that single loop on the back is what we're going to be working into. So we're going to insert our hook into that second spine loop that we have in our chain. We're going to yarn over and pull through. And then we're going to do that just one more time into the next spine loop in our chain. Might be a little tricky. Yarn over and pull through. We should have 3 loops on our hook. And then when we have these 3 loops, we're going to be going into the next available loop that we have and then working it just like a regular treble crochet. So we're going to insert, yarn over, pull through. We should have 4 loops on our hook, and this is going to be regular. So yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And we're doing a linked treble crochet because we do need height in order to get this little flap that we want for our sleeve, but we don't want to go in with just regular treble crochets. I mean, you can, but I don't want to go in with regular treble crochets because it's really gappy, and I would like to avoid that. That's why we're doing the linked treble. But let's just do the next one together. Actually, we'll do the next few together. And once we get here, if you guys want to pull what we just did apart just a little bit, you guys can very clearly see that there is a horizontal bar that goes across. There's 1, there's 2. Those are going to be the loops that we're working into. So from here, all we're going to do is insert our hook into that first horizontal bar, the one that's closest to our hook. We're going to yarn over, pull through. We should have 2 loops on our hook, and we're going to go into that next horizontal bar that is right beneath it. Insert our hook, pull through. We should have 3 loops on our hook, and then from here, we're going to go into that next available loop and then finish off this treble crochet like normal. So insert, yarn over, pull through. From here, yarn over, pull through 2, pull through 2, and pull through 2. And then that is our next linked treble crochet. Let's do this just one more time. Into this next horizontal bar that we have, we're going to insert our hook, yarn over, and pull through. And then into the horizontal bar right underneath that, insert and pull through. From here, we're going to insert our hook into the next available loop that we have into the base. Insert, pull through. We should have 4 loops on our hook. We're going to yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And then that is the height that we're going to get in order to be able to connect it into the inside portion of our sleeve. But go ahead and just keep doing these linked treble crochets going all the way down until we don't have any more loops left to go into, and then I'll show you guys what to do from there. So we're back and we've just gone all the way across with our row of linked treble crochets, and then when we have this, we're going to be slip stitching into that third row. So like I said before, we're going to count up 1, 2, 3 rows, and then we're just going to follow this half post double crochets loop all the way up, and when we have found that loop, we're just going to insert our hook into that loop and then single crochet and then slip stitch it, and now it's all connected. And when we have that, we're going to be flipping our work, and now we're going to be working into the fold into that same row that we just did our slip stitch into. So all we're going to do is just go across, putting 1 single crochet into each of those loops that we have, and don't worry about inserting, I guess, too much, because this is a back post half double crochet. You can see that it just kind of looks like the pattern. So go ahead and keep doing this all the way down. So we just made it all the way around with our row of single crochet that went along the inside of our fold. And then once we have this, we do need to connect it to this first linked treble crochet that we did. So how we're going to do that is actually count out from the bottom where we first started our linked treble crochet. We're going to count up 1, 2, 3, 4 loops. And then into that 4th loop, we're going to insert our hook, and then also insert the corner of our linked treble crochet. And from here, we're going to yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. And then when we have that, we can do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then go in with our sleeve length. So at this point, this is what we should have. I've already done one of my sleeves, so we're about to get started on the other one together, but it's actually going to be very, very simple. So the first thing that I want to do is to flip it inside out. And that's only so that when we go in with our seam, when we're done with it, we don't need to flip the entire thing inside out. It's already all done for us. And then when we have that, we are going to also take a look at the sweetheart neckline that we have. We're going to flip it because we're going to be working in through the back first. And when we have that, we are going to also want to measure out and see how long we want our sleeve to be. And I measured mine. I'm going to have a total of 50 chains. So that comes out to about 16.5 inches or 42 centimeters. So all we're going to do is insert our hook into any one of these corner loops, insert our yarn onto our hook, pull through, and then we're going to start off by making a chain of the length that we want. Now that we have our chain, what we're going to do from here is block off that last chain, do a chain up of 1, and then into that loop that we blocked off, we're going to insert our hook with a slip stitch. So we're going to yarn over, pull through everything. Let's do the next one together as well. Into the next available loop, yarn over, pull through everything. Then keep going all the way down with regular slip stitches all the way down until we get to the base of our sleeve. Then we're going to slip stitch into the base together. We now made it all the way down with our first row of slip stitches, and now we're going to slip stitch into the base so that we can work our way up to the next rows. So what we're going to do is see this next available loop, insert our hook, we're going to yarn over, pull through everything on our hook, and now this first row that we have is secure. And to work our way up to the next row, we're going to insert, yarn over, pull through. From here, we're going to flip our work. And then we're going to go in with back loop slip stitches, but basically just doing that for the rest of our sleeve. So let's just do the first few together. Into that next available loop, we're going to be inserting our hook into that back loop, yarn over, pull through everything. And we're just going to keep doing that, going all the way down, putting 1 back loop slip stitch into every loop that we have. Once we get it to the end, we're going to do a chain up of 1, flip our work, and then do more back loop slip stitches going down towards our base. When we get to the base, to close off that row, we're going to slip stitch into that next available loop to close off that row, and then to work our way up to the next one, just slip stitch into the next one, and then keep going back and forth like that until we don't have any more loops left to go into. And then when we are back, we're going to seam all this up together, and then we can get started on the rest. Alright, so we are back with the entirety of our sleeve that we have, and we don't have any more loops left to go into. So all we're going to do from here is just seam it up, going all the way down to this last loop that we have. We have just a little bit to do for the bottom border, and then we'll pretty much be all done. So let's just kind of knock this out. What we're first going to do is seam this up. But we did flip this inside out before we got started, so we don't need to do anything too crazy from here. All we're going to do is fold our work over itself. We're going to sandwich the two pieces that we have. And then we're just going to single crochet, making sure that we're going in through the front and the back panel at the same time. So what we're going to do is pull our yarn through, do a chain up of 1. And then once we get here, we're going to go in with our first single crochet together, and I'll let you guys do the rest on your own. But what we're going to do is insert our hook into that first available loop that we have in the front panel, and then the next available loop that we have in the back panel, and then single crochet. And that is it. So go ahead, just keep doing this all the way down until we don't have any more loops left. Go ahead and cut and tie. And then we're actually going to do this entire sleeve sequence all over again. So the linked treble crochet, we're going to single crochet into, the third row of our half double crochet into our fold. And then from there, just go in with regular back loop slip stitches, just going back and forth. That's pretty solid. But the only tip that I have for you guys is when you guys are doing your second one, just make sure when you first go in with your row of linked treble crochet and single crochet that goes in underneath our fold, just make sure that it's going in the right direction. So if you need to hold it up to make sure that it's on the same side, or flip it in, try it on, whatever you guys have to do, because I actually had to do this one, not the whole thing, but I actually had to do a little bit of this guy twice because the fold that we have was a little wonky. So I just want to save you guys some time, and then once we have the second one done, I'll meet you guys back so that we can do our little itty bitty super cute bottom border. All right, so we are back and we have our sleeves all sewn up and finished, and we have flipped everything inside out so that we are looking at the pretty side. And then once we get here, we're just going to go in with a little bottom border. So that's going to be pretty simple. The first row that we're going to do is actually just going to be a row of single crochets. And since we started off with a chain, we're just going to be putting 1 single crochet into every chain that we have along the bottom. So we're just going to, oops, sorry, I hit you guys. We're just going to insert our hook into any one of these loops and then go all the way around with a row of single crochet. Once we make it to the end, go ahead and slip stitch into that first single crochet, and then we'll move on from there. Alright, so we just made our way all the way around our bottom piece with just a single crochet into every loop that we had. And then once when we have that, we're going to want to figure out how long we want our bottom border to be. And I want mine to be a little over 2 inches or about 6 centimeters. So that's going to come out to about 6 chains. So I'm just going to make a chain that comes out to that amount that I want. Once when we have our chain, what we're going to do from here is block off that last chain that we just made for ourselves. From there, we're going to do a chain up of 3, and then into the 4th loop from our hook, or that loop that we just blocked off, we're going to go in with a double crochet. So all that is a yarn over, insert our hook into that 4th loop from our hook, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, pull through 2. And that's it. We're just going to be putting 1 double crochet into every loop that we have going back down our chain. Once we make it to the chain, we're going to be slip stitching into the second base loop that we have. Hopefully that makes sense, but we're actually almost there, so we're just going to stick with each other for about 3 more seconds. Let's do this one. I don't even know how many we have, but I'm just going to keep going until we get to the end. And we've just made our way all the way back down, putting 1 double crochet into every loop that we have into our chain, and now we're just going to attach it into the base. So all that is counting up the next 2 loops. Here's 1, here's 2, slip stitching into that second loop to close off this row. And then the rest of this is going to be fairly simple. What we're going to do is slip stitch up the next 2 loops to work our way up to the next row that we need to do. So there's 1 slip stitch and there's 2 slip stitches. We're going to flip our work and then go in with back loop double crochet. So same deal, just going into the back loops. What we're going to do is yarn over, insert our hook into that next back loop with a double crochet. And that is pretty much it for the base. We are almost done. We're just going to keep doing back loop double crochets until we get to the end of this row. Once we get to the end, what is this? Once we get to the end of this row, we're going to do a chain of 3, flip our work, do more back loop double crochets, and then once we get into the base, we're just going to talk through how to connect it into the base again. We're going to count up the next 2 loops, slip stitch into that second loop to close off that row that we just came into, and then to work our way up to the next row, we're just going to be slip stitching up the next 2, flip our work, and then do more back loop double crochets. And then from there, go ahead and just keep going back and forth just like that until we don't have any more loops left. And from there, we're just going to seam this up together. Okay, so we just went in with our bottom border, and really quickly before we seam it up and finish this piece, I'm getting major Disney princess vibes, but we're gonna move on from that for a second. We're just going to seam up the bottom, and this part is going to be exactly the same way that we've seamed up pretty much everything else so far. The only exception is that we did already flip this right side out, right? Yeah, so our seams are all on the inside. So the way that we're going to do this part is you guys can flip the whole thing inside out if you guys want. That is completely up to you, but that is actually kind of a nuisance. So all I like to do is just take these two ends that we have and sandwich them together so that the outside portions are facing each other. So all that is taking these two ends and then having those outside portions touch each other and just flip it like this. And then I'm not going to talk you guys through it because I'm sure you guys are sick of hearing me speak, but just go in through both the front panel and the back panel at the same time with the row of single crochet going all the way down so we don't have any more loops left. And then once we get down there, go ahead and cut and tie. Alright, so we have just sewn in the bottom border and we are all done. The last thing that we have to do for this piece is just weave in all of our ends. So we have woven in our ends and we have managed to make ourselves into a really cool and edgy Disney princess, which is all I could ever ask for in life. And if you guys want to feel the same way, then you guys can grab the pattern that is linked in the description to follow along. Or you can enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us who your favorite Disney princess is and why. And good luck to everyone who enters. Also, give this video a thumbs up and let us know what you liked about it, but if you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down but let me know how we can improve. And if you loved it, be sure to hit that bell so you know when there's new uploads for you. And also share us on Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, and Facebook. Those links are down below. If you want to buy this piece or any other piece on the channel, links to our Poshmark, Depop, and Etsy are down there too, along with tools used. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I will see y'all in the next one.